Our scripture today is Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. Hebrews 10, verses 24 and 25. Let us consider how we spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching.
Already on. Does that mean it's on? Okay. That means they picked it up while I was trying to sing and so forth. I apologize to you for that. Now I have to clip it on my pocket. And if I can move this. Yeah, now I feel a little more comfortable, like I'm not hiding back here. Oscar. How many noticed that? Oscar. Yes, that's wonderful to see you, brother. Now, when I was sitting up here contemplating you and making little deals with the Lord about the sermon, I first said to the Lord, I said, I want a special blessing for all the people who were here on time. Well, you know how it is when you're standing up here or sitting here and anticipating you're going to do this, and you look out there and there's 3 people. You're not very encouraged. But I changed my mind about that. I wanted a special prayer of thanksgiving, which I've already done, to all those parents who've been willing to give their children piano lessons. I've been there, some of you have been there, and it is a chore because they really don't want to practice 99% of the time. Is that right, sister? But it was worth it, wasn't it? If there was ever anything that I regretted in my life is not continuing with piano lessons. Oh, I did take lessons until I got to the point where I could say no. You know how that goes with children. But it was a mistake. And I gave all 3 of my daughters piano lessons. And my second daughter, she still plays for her own amazement. Whenever she is down, she's got a bad time, she's discouraged, she goes in and she plays the piano. It's her getting away place. And I'm happy that she can do that. And Mitchell, I sure hope we get you to take piano lessons. And am I doing okay up there? I would like to thank you. Usually when you're speaking, you're supposed to thank the people who ask you to come and speak. I want to thank those people in the balcony who are taking care of things. They're the people who make it happen nicely. It was June the 1st, 1965, a 13-and-a-half-foot sailboat left Massachusetts. It was destined for England. Before I go any further, a 13-and-a-half-foot sailboat is not very big. Well, maybe from about there, that's about 10 feet. Okay, so over to about here. That is a small sailboat. To sail from Massachusetts to England. In fact, the owner of the sailboat called it the Tinker Bell because it was so small. Makes sense, right? Well, This owner's name, I may as well look at my notes here, his name was Robert Manry. He had been a copy editor for the Cleveland Plain Dealer. That's a newspaper in which his job was to be the meticulous little person who went down there and looked for mistakes in what people had keyed in. Not a job I could do well. I've known people who can do that well. They're always looking for mistakes. You know people like that. But he had a job doing that. And he did this for about 10 years until he got overwhelmed with it. And he took a leave of absence to follow his lifelong dream. I just saw Carl go, yeah, following your lifelong dream. We all ought to do that. But sometimes we just can't. Robert was very afraid. But he wasn't afraid of the voyage. He wasn't afraid of the ocean. He was afraid of all the people he knew. His family, his friends. He was afraid of them because he was afraid they would discourage him from going through with his dream. Now, I've been there, haven't you? You want to do something, you think it's a great idea, and someone else, especially most of the time it's your spouse, tells you, nah, not a good idea. Discouragement is around you all the time. So he was afraid of the people who would try to talk him out of this endeavor. But he went forward. And on the day of his departure, his little boat was tied up next to the pier. He got in and he cast off, and there were about 40 people there. These 40 people were not saying yay. These 40 people were saying, the sun will burn you. You'll have skin cancer for the rest of your life. They're saying you won't have enough food. You didn't plan well enough. They're saying the boat will never make it. It's too small to make the journey. And you just won't be able to last and make it across there. However, there was one man who was standing on the edge of the crowd. And as the little boat cast off and started to drift away from the pier a little bit, this man ran down to the end of the pier, ran down there and said, "Bon voyage! You're really something." Excuse me. We're all proud of you. Good luck, brother. Excuse me. We all know this happens. I came prepared. I brought a little piece of candy, you know. Hope that helps. Jeannie just went to get me water. That never helps, but I'll be thankful when I get it. A man made this trip, and it was anything but pleasant. It was exactly what everybody told him it would be. Can you imagine you're out there in this 13-foot boat and a storm comes up? And what's going to happen? What's your greatest fear? It swept you overboard. He was prepared. He tied a rope around his waist just in case, and he followed it back. Actually, that's been one of my greatest fears, that I would be out in a boat, you know, bigger than a rowboat or a canoe, something with high sides, and I'd go overboard and I couldn't get back in. Nobody can tread water that long, you see. So that's a big fear. So he had taken care of. Another thing that happened is he was sleeping in the night, and there was the big horn sound of a cargo freighter about to run him down. And that happened several times. His boat, he thought, the sails, the mast would snap, the sails would come loose, but that all worked pretty good. But the loneliness of being the only guy out there, after a few days, he started having hallucinations. Has anybody here ever had hallucinations? I have. Nobody else? You missed it's a great thing. Yeah, thank you. Hey, it's just dreams that are very real, you see. And the food that he packed, after a while, it became tasteless. When you eat the same thing every day, pretty soon you don't want it anymore? Yeah? Okay. His rudder broke 3 times. And he was able to go overboard with that rope around his waist and repair it. Quite an interesting fellow, I suppose. Finally, after 78 days alone at sea, he sailed into a harbor in England on August 17th. He made it. During his many nights that he had been alone on the Tinkerbell, he fantasized about what he would do when he finally got there. He planned to check into a hotel and have the most expensive dinner he could order by himself. And the next morning, he was going to see if the Associated Press would be interested in his story. Right over here, Margaret, right over here. However, word of his approach had spread. To his amazement, 300 boats with their horns blaring met him in the harbor and accompanied him right up to the pier where he tied up. I hope that isn't mine. 300 boats, and he thought he was a total failure. 40,000 people met him on the pier. I didn't say 4 people. 40 people said he'd never make it. His brother said, "Bon voyage. You're a great person. You'll make it." And 40,000 people said, "Hallelujah. What a great thing you've done." I guess he was an overnight hero. Certainly a success. But he would have never made it on his own. Life is pretty difficult. You'll never make it through on your own. You'll never get there. That man running to the end of the pier, shouting encouraging things, was constantly in the back of Robert's mind while he was at sea. When he was discouraged, he thought of Robert. I thought of his brother and all the great things and that he had said in encouragement, the faith he had in him. And he made it. And his story is similar to ours. While I've never crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a 13-foot boat, I still float every day in a very small boat. In a sense, all of you are in small boats, just trying to make it to the other side. You're on a long journey, and you don't know whether you'll make it or not. And as you head out to sea, there are very few people to encourage you. Most of the people you know, most of the people I know, are much happier to tell you you'll never make it. we need encouragement. Men and women alike who will give others the needed encouragement to face life and its obstacles. I changed a particular word in here. I rewrote need encouragement, and I blotted out the E, the we. I need encouragement. It is a common thing for somebody to walk up and say, "Hello, Robert, how you doing?" What do they want me to say? I'm doing good. When the truth is, I'm about to die from lack of support. Now, tell me that that happens to you too. I know it does. It's a common thing for us to need encouragement and not get it. I need an encouraging word. Fortunately, I have a family called the Northwest Seventh-day Adventist Church. And my major reason, the primary reason, I'm not going to say it's the only reason, but it's certainly near the top of the list that I come here on Sabbath is to get an encouraging word. I've told many pastors and elders, don't preach a sermon that tells me what a sinner I am. I already know all of that. I don't need to be patted on the back, but I do need to be encouraged. I've been out all week fighting the devil. And I need more ammunition. That's what I need. In Acts 13:15, after the usual readings from the books of Moses and the prophets, those in charge of the service sent this message. Brothers, if you have any word of encouragement for the people, come and speak with us. Now, the need for encouragement isn't limited to Robert. The need to encouragement isn't limited to you. The very first Christians needed encouragement too. I just read where they said, please come and speak a word of encouragement to us. In today's world, it appears that about everything is getting connected to everything else. Right? You've got telephones. You know, the little things that ring in the middle of the church service. You got those. You've got emails. Took me a long time to start using email. And then when I realized I could send you a 1 or 2 word message to get it across, and I didn't have to put up with talking to you, I started using email. And besides that, you've got Facebook. I was really slow to start on Facebook. And then I got on it because some friends said, hey, you're missing out. You know, the really interesting thing about these technological things like Facebook, what do people call you when you're on a list on their Facebook page? Friend, they don't even hardly know you. Isn't it true? They're not their friend. I don't call friends. They're contacts on my Facebook page. They're not friends. I don't know most of those people. Oh, yes, I knew some of them once, you know, when I was 10 years old. But the reality is, they surprise me every time they post some off-the-wall thing. I think, did I really know them? Do I really want to call them friends? And then there's, of course, the connectivity of Twitter, right? Where you can make some off-the-wall comment and the whole world thinks you really mean it. I have enough trouble just saying my everyday things and having my wife realize I didn't mean that. At least not the way she took it. No matter how connected we are technically, it seems we're getting less and less connected emotionally, personally. And that's not what God intended. In Genesis 2:18, very common verse, everybody knows after I quote it, at least. And I'm going to use it in a way that the Scripture is not actually using it. But it says there that When God first made man, he said, it is not good for the man to be alone. And I found out that whether I've got a spouse or not, it's not good that I don't have friends real close to me. That's the alone that I'm probably more concerned with than anything else, is my friends, my family. And I believe that's what God was talking about when it's not good to be alone. You recognize that I have that need. Oh, excuse me. One of the words in the Bible that expresses that need, that togetherness, is the sharing of ourselves with each other. You know what we call that when we share ourselves with each other? You called it coming to church. I don't call it that. Some people call the meal that we'll have later potluck. All the world does potluck. I call it fellowship. The being together. And I've told a lot of pastors and other people at other churches that I attend, the major thing this church has going is we share a meal together every week. Some of you do. Some of you don't do it every week. You don't have the need, maybe. But it's fellowship, isn't it? The ability to sit down and talk to each other and share a meal together and say, I don't know who made this, but it really isn't very good. And it's the person sitting across the table from you. Experiencing that fellowship is very, very important. Life has a way of wearing you down. We tend to get discouraged when we're worn down. And when you're discouraged, you have a broken spirit. And your strength is gone. Not just your physical strength, but your emotional strength gets way down as well. All around us are people who are being crushed by life. You know them. Their marriages are failing. Some of them will tell you about it and some of them won't. Their finances are a mess. Even fewer will tell you that their finances are a problem. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about their kids. They have regrets. Some of them have huge regrets. And their health isn't what they'd like it to be. And life is crushing them. What happens when we start getting discouraged? We start complaining. We start feeling sorry for ourselves. We may even turn bitter. Isolate ourselves. Sometimes, this is unthinkable to me, that we even get so discouraged we stop coming to church. It's sad. When we need each other the most, we tend to isolate ourselves. Yet, there is a major reason why we Christians need to be concerned about encouraging each other. A major reason why you should be concerned that you are spending your life doing as much encouragement as possible. I'm going to give you that reason. Jesus told us in John 13:35, your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. So if you really call yourself a Christian and you're not doing the deeds of kindness and encouraging other people, start with Christians, then you are making God, or you're telling the world a lie. It is your attitude and your love and what you do for other individuals that proves to the world, indeed, you're a Christian and you love others just like Jesus did. It's by your love that you tell them that you're a Christian. In 1 Thessalonians 5, Paul said, your job is to encourage each other and build each other up. Encourage each other. Now, I could make the assumption that everybody here realizes what a Christian is. Except that one. I could make that assumption. The truth is, most of you have at some time or another proved that you don't know. Because a Christian is not someone who knows all the rules. A Christian is not someone who knows all the theology. A Christian is not someone who tells everyone else all the rules and all the theology. A Christian is someone who shows everyone how much they care. Let me say it again. A Christian is someone who shows others how much they really care because Jesus cares for them. A gentleman by the name of William Wilberforce was the man credited for getting the British Parliament to abolish support for slavery. He was twice defeated in his efforts to make this happen. And he was very discouraged. Now, I've known a few good politicians, and they don't seem to ever be discouraged. William Wilberforce was a politician. He was trying to get the Parliament to change things. But he was very discouraged because it was something that was very dear to him. He was about to give up in his efforts to get the Parliament to abolish slavery. Then, an old friend of his, John Wesley, heard of his predicament and his discouragement. And John Wesley was on his deathbed. He raised himself up and he asked for a pen and pencil. Not a cell phone, they didn't have them yet then, but a pen and pencil. And he wrote this note to his friend, William Wilberforce. If God be for you, who can be against you? Are all of them stronger than God? Oh, be not weary of well-doing. Go on in the name of God and in the power of his might. Wesley died 6 days after writing that note. William Wilberforce, with renewed dedication, continued on. Then, in 1833, 3 days before his own death, the law to abolish slavery in Great Britain was brought to a vote once more. Parliament finally abolished slavery in Britain. And what if John Wesley had not written that note of encouragement to his friend, William Wilberforce? It may have happened anyway, but probably it may have taken a lot longer. But because of the dedication of one man and the encouragement of another, it happened. Encouragement is it's important because of how it makes you feel. Okay, I got that. But there's something else. There's a lot more at stake. Hebrews 10:25 says, "Let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another." Listen, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. You can encourage each other because that's the right thing to do. But it says in Hebrews, do it because Jesus is coming back. And there's no time to lose. I believe Jesus is coming back. I believe that our eternity, my eternity, is at stake. You know, there are some things the church does very well. There are some things the church just can't do. It can't have fellowship while you're sitting at home watching TV. I know people, you know people, who said that the sermons on 3ABN are a lot better than they are here at the Northwest Church. They're probably right. I've never watched 3ABN, so I can't really pass good judgment. And I don't want to. Because watching TV sermons, no matter how good the music is, no matter how good the sermon is no substitute for giving your fellow brother and sister in the church a hug. There's no substitute. So, Rich, I come to church just to get your hugs. Oh, and yours too. We're here encouraging each other. God gave His church a task to do that goes far beyond preaching. And I don't care how good the preaching is, how accurate the preaching is, the task is bigger. He's called us to love each other. And quite frankly, there are some of you who I find it very hard to love. Yes, Susan. She looked at me funny. I went yesterday to a burial service for Charlie Hepworth, a nice, loving kind of guy, who every young girl in the church feared his hugs, his attention. You know, he had an emotional, mental problem, and they were all afraid of him. It was a little bit hard for me at that service to say a lot of good things about him, because I could always hear my children talking about, oh, I hope Charlie's not there. You know, there are some people I don't particularly love, but I'm called to be a word of encouragement to them anyway. You agree? Yeah. And there was Bud Greer, Charlie's older brother. He was hard to love too, because every week when he came to church, he needed a bath. Hard for me, but I still loved him. I still said encouraging things to him, and so did a lot of other people. We're called to be a family, a community, a fellowship. The New Testament uses the phrase one another many times. You probably know it in the context of love one another, serve one another. Here's the hardest one probably. Forgive one another. I forgive Bud for needing a bath. But I still love Bud. We are to encourage one another. And just watching television won't do it. The only way we can effectively encourage one another is by committing ourselves to being part of a church family. Not for the sermons, not for the music, as good as it was today, Anthony, but to live in a relationship with each other. We need each other. Hebrews 10:24 says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Did you realize that the Bible says acts of love and good works don't come naturally? You've got to think of ways, and my job is to think of ways is to help you do that, to love each other. I don't know. I'm going to be a failure today. I can't think of ways to help you love each other. Maybe to tell you stories about myself and Bud. But that's the end result today. You need to go away from here thinking of ways that you can show your love and kindness to each other. With some of us, there are some people you know who encouraging things just seem to fall from their lips, right? They say nice things all the time. Others of you may think, God didn't give me that spiritual gift. When all along you've got the gift of being kind to someone. You enjoy doing it. I think everyone enjoys being kind occasionally. It's just a part of who we are. In Romans 12 it says, if you have the gift for showing kindness, do it gladly. I'm going to tell you that encouragement won't happen unless you plan for it. Because you're busy, right? I have such good intentions. And they fall by the wayside. And I tell myself, well, it's okay, Robert. You're busy. Your wife has been in the hospital. You're the caretaker and the lover for Mitchell. And you've got work you're trying to do. And people call you for this or that. So I can get a pass on being encouraging to people. I'm going to suggest a couple of things you can do. Little things. Big to me, little in reality. Your mailbox. Mine is stuffed with catalogs I don't want, magazines I didn't ask for, bills I'd just as soon send back. And every once in a while there will be an envelope that's handwritten. Sometimes I get fooled and it's an advertisement. But most of the time that handwritten envelope is the one. I don't open it first, I save it till last. And I savor the words of encouragement inside. Once in a while somebody will send me one. And I know it's happened to many of you. Remember Carol Swart? She still sends me handwritten little notes once in a while. And it's been a long time since I've seen her. Couldn't you send her one? It would be wonderful if I could get off of my patootie and start sending handwritten notes, wouldn't it? I don't have much faith in myself, but I have a lot of faith in you. The other thing is the telephone. I have a love-hate relationship with the telephone. When it rings, I could throw it out the window. And I know some of you sleep with your telephone. It's an amazing device. I've been thinking that I could call someone. And I know that when you answer the phone, you're afraid, oh no, here it goes. Robert's going to talk to me for hours. So I've come up with a script. I don't have much time, but God just put you on my mind. I want you to know that you're in my prayers today. How many people would not like to get that? Who, you know? Is there anybody here who doesn't want me to call them? I'm not promising I will. But I do have an assignment. This morning, I went to my church directory list and I wrote down one telephone number. Somebody I think you should call. if you do it and the number's wrong, what could you have hurt? Area 219. I'll wait for you to get a pen. Do you need to? Okay, you got it down so far, area 219-374-5753. If it's wrong, you can still say the same thing, can't you? If it's been disconnected, I apologize, but I think it's a good number. The best way to encourage someone isn't through what you say. It's through listening to them when they want to talk. It's by trying to understand them. Terrible thing happened to me a few years ago. Maybe it was worse for my daughter, but my youngest daughter was pregnant with twins and miscarried at about 7 months. I tried. It was a terrible experience for me to be there, to watch the one child that survived birth, to watch her die. It was a terrible experience. I thought it was really unfeeling for the hospital to say, come and hold your grandchild while she dies. I haven't had a worse experience. But worse than that was I tried to tell someone about it. Someone who was my friend. And this person in their attempt to encourage me said, buck up, Robert. Deal with it. And I needed somebody to hold me and cry with me. And there's a lot of people here who need somebody to hold them and cry with them. And if they're not here, you know them. We need to have a plan for encouraging each other. Because if you don't have a plan, you won't do it. Make it a regular habit. There are a lot of hidden opportunities to encourage each other. And what you say can mean life or death, literally and spiritually, to everyone you meet. Your encouraging words can change someone's life. And your words can lift people up. And we all need to be lifted up occasionally. June 18, 1956. A freak accident occurred. It was in the east on the Hudson River near New York. A speeding motorboat bounced on a wave, and 2 of the passengers were shot out into the water. One was a little girl about 3 years old, and the other was a 50-year-old man. The boat circled back around to get them. The man first thought, I can stand on the bottom and lift this child up out of the water and save it. Now, he could tread water and wait for the boat to come back, but the 3-year-old can't do that. The water wasn't shallow enough for him to do that. But he did it anyway. He picked up that child and he held that child up so that their head was out of the water. And by the time the motorboat got back, they were able to pull that little child out of the water, and she was alive. But the man who tried to hold her up did not live. That's how a man named Dawson Truman died, holding someone else up. According to an article in the Time magazine, he lived to save others. His death was just the way he would have planned it. In his obituary, someone wrote that he died just the way he lived, always lifting up someone. What a legacy. Is that what you want? Each of you will probably have a tombstone. And a good number of years ago, probably 25, I was at Niagara Falls on the Canadian side, and there was a statue that was way back off the road that you walk by in the park. And on there was this man, I don't remember his name, but his legacy is he was always a gentleman. I've decided that's what I want you to put on mine. But I might change that. If his life is always lifting someone else up, I couldn't deny that that'd be awfully good, wouldn't it? If that's what you were known for. What a legacy. It's taken me many years to learn that one good word can inspire and physically help other people. The terrible tragedy of those years is I forget. I don't always remember to say nice things. I wish I did. Don't you? I wish I did. Because I know how important one good word can be. Let's bow our heads. Father, you've told us that our words have the power of life and death. I pray that you will grant us understanding hearts, that we may see people. We may see their struggles, their weakness, their strengths. We may see their hopes and despairs, their efforts and their failures, and touch them with your love. Help us to encourage one another, Lord, today and every day. And if I could have you, Glenn, lead us in the closing song.